Hello, everybody. We are opening the webinar and the live event, half-life event, dedicated to the exhibition Anatoly Zverev, 1931-1986. That is going on at the Harriman Institute, and this is the exhibition of several prominent works from the collection of Tatiana and Natalia Kolodzei from the gallery and foundation. And I'm Mark Lipovetsky, professor of Russian studies at the Slavic Languages Department at Columbia University. And so our arrangement is pretty difficult, and I'm sitting with my back to dear guests, but otherwise that's difficult because of the Zoom and the live audience arrangements. But I hope that you will forgive us for this, and that's all done this way in order to stay out of maskless. Our audience is suffering in masks. Right. So today we'll be talking about Anatoly Zverev, this absolutely extraordinary and in many ways enigmatic artist who was one of geniuses produced by the underground nonconformist art scene of the 1950s, 1980s, and even the first date here is quite amazing, because we used to think about the Soviet underground as something that had been developing in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, but the example of Zverev proves vividly that all begins much earlier. And here in the Harriman Atrium, we have quite a few absolutely amazing works by Zverev done in the 1950s. So the event will consist of several sort of acts. The first act will be video recordings of memoirs about Zverev by Tatiana Kolodzei, who is here and who will talk with us later, and also by Natalia Kostaki and Maria Plavinsky. So they will be talking about Zverev and how they remember him and what they think about their art. Then we'll have the live conversation, which will be also supported, I hope, by the questions both from the audience and from audience here in this room, and audience on Zoom and YouTube channel, which I will be moderating. Great. So, Natasha, do you want to say a few words for opening remarks?
No, we'll probably look when we'll
Right. Right. So then let's begin with the first video clip, and that will be by Natalia. Tatiana Kolodzei, right?
This night I do it.
Yeah, this night. So it's the recording from this night. But let me introduce Tatiana. She's a famous art collector, curator, and art historian. She started collecting Russian and Soviet nonconformist art in the 60s.
And I'm still in life.
Very much. Tatiana was only 17 when she met Georgy Kostakis, a famous collector of Soviet avant-garde and nonconformist art, and from him she caught what she calls the collecting bug for life. In 1969-71, Kolodzei organized several exhibitions of nonconformist art, including personal exhibitions of Mikhail Kulakov, Maria Plavinsky, Anatoly Kandaurov in Dubna, in this famous sort of closed nuclear institute. In 75, artists approached her and Leonid Talashkin to help organize an exhibition at the VDNH and dedicated to the anniversary of the bulldozer exhibition. And then later in 1989, during Perestroika, Kolodzei organized the exhibition 100 artists from the collection of Tatiana Kolodzei at the State Museum of Fine Arts in Tashkent. And these are only few exhibitions that Tatiana has organized. I think that their number is in 3 digits. And much,
A lot.
a lot. We have some photographs from them. These exhibitions were happening in the most important museums of Russian and world art. And so this small but precious exhibition of Zverev is only a little snippet of the fantastic collection that Tatiana and Natalia have in control.
Thank you so much. Great.
In Дорогомиловская street. In 1969, Anatoly Zverev visited me in Дорогомиловская street, where I live in one room communal apartments. My neighbors become very nervously as the Toля wear his shorts and swear shorts upside down with dirty gray color. It's his signature style in this time. It's no materials for not number of Soviet Union artists. And for this, the Toля work in private canvas, lay down this canvas in the floor. And I have a book in painting technique, and Toля look it through, especially its Gesser part. We discussed some great masters in the past, and for me it's very interesting to talk with him. Toля know a lot about history of art. After our long discussion, Toля asked, would you like to paint your portraits? I paint your portraits. Myself know a lot of story when the Toля painted the different portraits in all the color upside down on the ceiling, I hesitate. Toля felt it and asked me to bring the newspaper and lay them on the table. Question is where they get art materials. I don't have any. I only have gray cardboard and jar Indian ink and Japanese brush. Toля really appreciated English ink and Japanese brush. Several virtuoso strokes, a portrait was ready. I am so appreciate and so like it. Toля said, when nobody think anything, I would write is a gift for good advice. Toля tell me, you help me a lot. I'm so happy to, when I visit you and see this great book. We come downstairs to Пельменная and have some bites. Catch of glances of visitors, Toля asked, you ashamed to sit with me? He was very, very sensitive and quivering person. Toля made my second portraits in studio of Vladimir Nemuhin, oil on canvas, 1985. I brought primed canvas and oil paints with me. My second portraits I like so much too.
And I can only add that those of you who came to this room can see this portrait right outside.
Yeah, you can see.
It's right there. This amazing portrait of 1969 made in
Few minutes
a
only.
few
Like.
minutes, right? Without any drafts.
In no color in my ceiling, in my apartment, one room, in communal apartments. Very nothing.
So you'll have a chance to come close to it.
Yeah.
I hope, right? And the second memoir is from Natalia Kostaki, who is an artist and art collector, and obviously she is the daughter of the famous collector Georgi Kostakis, George Kostakis. Natalia has been educated at the Stroganov School of Arts and Industrial Design in Moscow, and she absorbed the collection of her father while growing up, and she herself developed as a highly original artist who combines the influences coming from avant-garde with the influences coming from the Russian icon painting. So that's
My first memories of Zverev are associated with the year 1959, although he appeared in our family much earlier. But namely, I remember the summer of '59 because Anatoly used to live in our dacha during that time. Toly would paint without getting tired, without any strain. He couldn't live without this passion. Painting and Zverev were one and the same. Within one day, he was able to create tens of drawings, mostly gouache, watercolor, tempera, sometimes oil. It was hard to believe how he managed to create such a number of stunningly beautiful work in such a short amount of time. Once my father gave Toля the idea to try and draw something in the suprematistic style. Zverev, liking the idea, and got to work. Toля didn't have a workshop, so most of his masterpieces were born at my father's apartment on Vernadsky Avenue. Tola's performances always attracted a large audience. Everyone who was in the apartment would take part in his show. The room that was set aside for the workshop would be carefully prepared. The floor would be draped in plastic with newspaper sheets laid on top. Furniture and everything else in the room would also be covered. A large sheet of Wattman paper would be placed on top of the newspapers. We would set up buckets and pans of water, open numerous cans of gouaches of various colors, and prepare brushes and palette knives. Tolia would soak a large brush in water, then take gouache of solid color from the can and splash all of this beauty on the sheet of already soaking wet Wattman paper. Then he would rinse the brush in the first, the second, then third pan, cleaning it off completely. Next came the second color, which would partially overlap the previous one. Then the third, and so on. It seemed like someone was directing his hand. It was some kind of magic. Having finished splashing the gouache, he would pick up smaller brushes and palette knives, and within several moments gather all this chaos into a single whole. First the eyes, then the nose and the lips would appear, finally the outline of the face. First the eyes, then the nose and the lips would appear. finally the outline of the face, and an image of the person posing for him was looking at us. It was fantastic. The similarity would reveal itself within seconds. Thus, the portrait was complete. One model after the other, and so on. After the act, everyone, having enjoyed himself, would be invited to the table by the hostess of the house, my mother Zina, my father's beloved wife, whom he affectionately called Zolotka. Zverev used to paint lots of portraits and often visited the zoo, where he would draw pictures of animals. Tolia liked the open air and used to travel. As a result of these trips, amazing landscapes with churches and pines started to appear within his work. In general, Zverev mastered many painting techniques. Among them were oil, watercolors, gouache, tempera, as well as all kinds of materials for graphic work, sanguine, ink, pencil, and so on. He would use anything that came to hand and apply paint instead of a brush. Even a piece of bread, a cigarette butt, rose petals, cereals, flour, or salt would get into his work. Numerous self-portraits appeared during this creative period, depicting his transformation from a young boy to an elderly man with wisdom in life. Zverev didn't look in the mirror while painting himself. In 1977, our dacha in Bakovka caught fire. Everything that had been hanging on the walls was burned. Pictures, icons, basically the whole house. Some of the drawing that had been stored in folders and got charred at the edges were preserved. Beginning 1979, most of my family left Russia, while my husband and I stayed in Moscow. During that time, Tolia Zverev would continue to visit us. He'd always show up unannounced, as in the year of knowing him, he had become our own. Having his alcohol addiction in mind, my husband and I decided not to keep any alcohol in the house. Sometimes Volodya would get a couple of bottles of beer for him. Once when I asked him, Tolia, why didn't you finish your bottle of beer? He replied, I'll always finish it. You don't drink, so why should hurry? He replied, I'll always finish it. You don't drink, so why should I hurry? Generally, Tolia was very warm towards my family and I. He once said that he understood who is who well and appreciates good and selfless relationship. After my parents' departure, the question of the apartment renovation arose. It had not been renovated since the family had moved in. The doors were tattered and the kitchen cabinets were in very poor shape. So one day Tolia came over and I said to him, Tolia, I can't look at this mess. Would you please paint them? He agreed without a second thought. First, Tolia painted the doors of the three-part cabinet. A hen with a flock of chickens appeared, followed by a rooster, and finally a graceful fox with a fluffy tail. On the upper cabinet doors, a church rose against the backdrop of a landscape. The addition of these pieces of art immediately transformed the kitchen. It came to life, demanding further decorating, but the rest wouldn't happen immediately. Tolia would periodically come over and draw portraits of us. 2 years later, it would be time for the bench and dining table in the kitchen. The long, narrow backing boards of the bench set the theme themselves, galloping horses. In addition, Toля had painted the tabletop on which he depicts a horse with a naked woman. Next in the line was a small coffee table on which a portrait of myself found its place. Finally took on the doors to the rooms. Toля had painted my daughter Dasha with myself on one of them. Pine trees, a cliff, and a horse on the other. The doors had been painted by him, squeezing paint straight out of the tubes. The painting turned out to be embossed. The thin tips of the strokes had to dry for a long time. In the same period, we asked Toля to paint our family portrait. We cut off a large piece from a roll of primed canvas. In the same period, we asked Toля to paint our family portrait. We cut off a large piece from a roll of canvas. Toля put it on the table, smoothed it out with his palm, and began to create. The first strokes were quick, and the portrait would start to resemble us very closely as he continued to apply the paint to the canvas. Then he'd look up and squint towards the distance, then back at us, sitting there breathless. He'd then apply bright colors to the canvas again. This continued until he said, "Done, baby." Anatoly Zverev's last work concerning the decoration of our house was a painting on a door with a glass inlay that led to my workshop. There he depicted a giraffe with flowers, leaves, and vines on the frame around the glass, while a beautiful peacock appeared on the glass itself. This door looks amazing when lit from behind. My father visited Moscow during the fall of 1986 to attend the exhibition on the contributions of Tretьяков Gallery. One evening, Toля Zverev came over. We had long conversations. My father would praise him, mentioning that he liked the work that Toля had done in our house, concluding that he was wrong in believing that Zverev was exhausted in his later work. Tola's fingers were twisted because he was suffering from chronic rheumatoid arthritis. He couldn't hold a brush in his hand for long periods of time while working. He'd sometimes shake his hand as if that gesture would relieve the unbearable pain he was under. In 1989, a posthumous exhibition of Zverev's work was held in Moscow. The exhibition was very interesting and varied, revealing all of his talent. Alexei Sosna, the director of Zverev Cultural Center, in 2005 suggested to organize a joint exhibition Anatoly Zverev and Natalia Kostaki. I was thrilled and honored to have my work shown in the same space of the work of this astonishing artist. Another exhibition of Zverev's work from our collection took place at the Открытый Клуб Gallery on Spiridonovka Street in Moscow. Around 30 fire-damaged drawings were shown there, which I preserved myself with love and care, reinforced the edges of the burned sheets, and pasted them on Michelin paper. Another large exhibition took place in the Great Hall of the New Manege in 2012, called Zverev on Fire, showing more of the restored pieces. The organizer of this exhibition was Natalia Opaleva, founder of the Anatoly Zverev Museum. It was received very well by the visitors, the press, and television. The wonderful layout of all the catalogs containing the works shown at the exhibitions of our collection were designed by my daughter Daria Zajarei. We have some plans regarding the organization of themed exhibitions of art by Anatoly Zverev. Alas, due to the pandemic, they cannot be realized yet, but we do not lose hope.
The last but not least recorded memoir is by Maria Plavinsky, who is an art historian, artist, and curator. She was born into a family of scholars, but devoted her life to contemporary art. In 1980, Plavinsky defended her magistral work, her diploma in contemporary and nonconformist art at the Moscow State University. In 1980, it was a rare thing to happen. It was actually the first such degree conferred in the USSR, and it was dedicated to the art of Vladimir Weisberg, thus laying a cornerstone of the study of contemporary art in Russian language art history. And for many years, Plavinsky worked at the Central House of Artists. In the 1990s, she took part in the work of the Hermitage Association, which prepared the first retrospective exhibition of nonconformists and their younger followers. A major influence in her life was her union with the nonconformist artist Dmitry Plavinsky, as wife and interpreter of his art for many decades. And art historical work of Maria Plavinsky bears little resemblance to ordinary practice. She writes about the complex and even mysterious art in a simple and beautiful classical Russian language. So let's give the floor to her.
I am godmother of Dmitry Plavinsky, 1967. It's my godson.
So we have Maria Plavinsky.
Anatoly Zverev was a famous Russian artist. The Kolodzei Museum in Moscow is named after his name and displayed his art. There are numerous books and films about his work and life. These records, the facts of his biography and the testimony of his contemporaries speaks of his incredible abilities and the strange way of his life. Unquestionably, it was God's gift, but also the outcome of the events he has lived through. There is one story that a few remember or that most never know. In my view, it explains the Zverev phenomenon better than anything else. Anatoly was born in Moscow. During the World War II, his family, father, mother, the 12-year-old boy and two sisters found themselves in the village in the Tambov region south of Moscow, behind enemy lines and not far from the fighting. The partisans were attacking the Germans. The Germans responded and executed those they managed to manage. The remnants of partisan unit went hidden into the woods, so the Germans retaliated against the locals and eradicated all villages. Once the house where the Zverevs have been staying was hit by an artillery round. The mother was at work, the kids were playing outside, the father was sick and in a bed inside the house. Suddenly everything changed. The house was destroyed, the father's legs were blown off. This was absurd and paradoxical. Anatoly survived but experienced a strong shock which deeply scared him psychologically for the rest of his life. This explains the algorithm of his art and determines the very nature of his work, the lighting assessment of the situation, the explosion reaction, and the victorious signature of the survivor. His impressions were on the tip of his fingers. The bunch of brushes painted the hieroglyphs of what he has seen. He improvised and worked at using anything on everything. The media didn't matter. and nor did the result. The discipline and the copyist and the other practitioners of the unchained manner of his painting could never master either than psychological intensity or the impressiveness of his striking, sometimes visionary images. His work, however, were not always masterpieces. After the war, the family returned to Moscow also for a period of time, living in the district of Sokolniki. It seems that the horrors of war were over. Anatoly kicked the soccer ball with other boys, played checkers in the park, and did a lot of drawing. His grades in school were mediocre. He eventually entered the trade school to become a fresco painter and for a short time studied in the year of 1905 art college, but was expelled for bad behavior. His formal education was over, but the interesting part of his life was just the beginning. Meeting people. His horizons were greatly expanded, but Sinitsyn, Rumnev, and especially by Kostakis and his collection of the art 1910s, 1920s avant-garde art. By living through books kept in their houses and looking at the reproductions, he learned about the old masters and the first wave of Russian avant-garde. The forbidden art thus was neither mentioned in lectures or displayed in museum. These mentors not only enriched his inner world, but also appreciated his talent. Zverev was strongly attached to them. Anatoly was simple and friendly, but somewhat on guard with others. He felt safe among people. The Sokolniki Park and the City Committee of Graphic Artists on Malaya Gruzinskaya Street and other places in central Moscow were crowded. They were very different from his parent place in the city boondocks in the Sviblovo district. That area reeked the potential danger. He hated living there and called it Dumlova. He wandered around the city, sleeping on a couch in friend's apartment and paying for a lodging with a portrait of his hosts. His affair with the old woman Oksana Asieva looked absurd. She was 39 years his senior, but it went on for many years. The rumor mill called Oksana the Kremlin wall, but the truth was that Zverev was romantic, unknown to anyone and unkempt. He wanted to win over a great beauty and heroine of the 1920s poetry, who was rising on Porch Gorky Street, Moscow's main thoroughfare. He wished to push from her heart and house the ghost of her late husband, a famous poet well treated by the state. He wanted to show what he is capable of and win all battles at once. He immediately recognized in the aging lady the image of remained beauty regardless of her actual years, immortalized her on canvas, paper, and in verse. The muse of the poets became his muse too. Zverev, the survivor, became the legend of the second wave of Russian avant-garde art. That's it. Thank you.
With a question to Natalia. So Zverev is pretty unique by the fact that his works, despite his highly unofficial status, have been very early discovered by the American art connoisseurs and critics, and as is well known, his work appeared back in 1959 on the cover of Life magazine, right? And in 1961, MoMA bought his, somehow acquired his work. So can you speak a little more about Zverev in the United States, in New York, and in your collection?
Thank you so much. First, I would like to say that during his lifetime, Zverev created more than 30,000 artwork, which is a large heritage. And he was painting on everything, as we heard, on canvases, cardboards, photographs. For example, here at the Harriman, we have two drawings created on the vintage photographs from Itartas. In our own collection,
Just us back then.
just us, yes. So in our collection, we have 70 works by Anatoly Zverev, including paintings, drawings, watercolors, gouaches, even few sheets with poetry. Here at the exhibition, we're presenting 21 works on paper. Zverev rarely left Moscow. He never traveled to outside of Russia. But his first solo exhibition took place in 1965 in Paris and then in Switzerland. But here in New York, Alfred Barr, the famous Alfred Barr, included his work, gouache apples from 1955 at the exhibition, group exhibition in 1956, which was called the New Acquisitions for the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. And the next year, in 1957, he included another work by Zverev, also as part of the new acquisitions in the Museum of Modern Art. And overall, there is 6 artworks by Anatoly Zverev at the Museum of Modern Art here in New York. And for Alfred Barr at that time, it was important to showcase the diversity of the collection at MoMA. And he was stating in a press release that among 40 artists represented at the exhibition in 1957, only 20 artists are from the United States, and the other 20 artists are from 16 different countries, including USSR, in Korea, and Africa. The next showing of Anatoly Zverev works was in 1974 at the MoMA as well. And it was shown together with the works by Plavinsky, Varazi, Neizvestny, Sitnikov, and some other artists. And this show in 1974, it was a response and was dedicated to the exhibition, the famous Bulldozer exhibition, which took place on September 15th, 1974. So it was a very quick, for the large Socialist Museum, it was a very quick response to what was happening in Russia when the government sent the fire trucks against the art. Zverev, bulldozers, yes. And Zverev himself, he never took part in any political events. He did not participate in the bulldozer exhibition. And the only exhibition during his lifetime was at the Garkom Grafikov on Malaya Gruzinskaya 28, which was organized by his friend, artist friend, Vladimir Nemukhin. And of course, later, after he passed away, there was many exhibitions, both in Tretyakov Gallery, as well the exhibition which Natalia Kostaki mentioned, Zverev in Flames. This particular exhibition was organized by Natalia Opoleva and Polina Lobachevskaya, the future founders of the AZ Museum. And here's, like you see, a lot of works which we saw in the presentation. So Zverev have an interesting history, and his artistic heritage lived with us, even though he's no longer with us, but his creative career stays with us for a long time.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. I have another question, and forgive me for, and I'm not going to occupy Natalia and Tatiana for a very long time. I will open the floor very soon.
Yeah, free, please welcome.
No, people also want to ask questions, and I'm just trying to warm up. And so I'm not an art historian, I'm a literary scholar. And for me, Zverev reminds very much of Vindik Yerofeev. So Yerofeev, as we know, has transformed his very chaotic lifestyle into the subject matter of his famous Moskva Petushki. And on the other hand, he had very dramatic relations with alcohol. We heard about dramatic relations with alcohol in Natalia Kostaki's monologue, and we've seen all these famous photographs of Zverev, where he looks tragic at best. My question is about sort of this lifestyle. So is this lifestyle completely different or completely separate from the art? Should we sort of put it aside and forget about it as some kind of the dark background for these festive works, or is it a very important part of the perception? So in your understanding, do we have to separate the lifestyle from art, or do we have to perceive it as one, as one narrative?
Yes and no, it's a very complex question. But first of all, if just going back to his exhibition history, in 1991, the famous artist Chuck Close picked Anatoly Zverev artwork for the group exhibition, the portrait group exhibition at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. He didn't know his lifestyle. He just picked the artwork on artistic merit. He never met Zverev. But if we're going back to the kind of like Moscow art circles, a lot of Zverev friends and also some art appreciators, they were waiting for this performance from Zverev. So this was a very important part for them. And so they were expecting those portraits, they were expecting kind of the performance, throwing the paint on the floor, on the ceiling, and they were expecting to have AZ in the corner, large AZ as a signature. So like for some people it was important, and Zverev did deliver. So, and he was a very sensitive person. So he did realize when is the time to create this performance, at least at the beginning of his career. He realized when is the time to create this performance and when is the time just to be someone else. But he was like a myth, like he was creating a lot of myths. And that's what my mom was telling about her portrait when he offered her to paint her in '69. She was really
Absolutely
hesitant.
sober,
Yes.
absolutely.
And she was hesitant. She was like, she didn't want to make a renovation from the apartment. She just to say, okay. I mean, and he realized that he just very nicely painted, and there was no splashes like on the ceiling.
But what are we talking about splashes? So what was this performance? Can you describe it?
So like what we heard, like also in Natalia Kostaki. So like they basically they lined out the piece of paper on the floor, and they brought a lot of brushes, and they put like large like water taps, and he was putting those brushes into the paint, and then he was just then he was just
Jackson Pollock.
Yes,
Right.
and so the process of painting was a big importance to him. So the process itself, the results probably less important, but the process he enjoyed a lot.
Only difference when it's Jackson Pollock do it in his studio, but Zverev do it at somebody apartment.
Where people have to live after.
Absolutely big difference, you know.
And also he never, I mean, he only like it was heard from the Kostakis, only there was like only several kind of non-figurative works in the Zverev career, because I mean he later realized that I mean he tried to kind of like when he was staying in George Kostaki's place, like so he was influenced by the work by the Russian avant-garde, but only for a short while. So then the kind of figurative elements came back into his artistic style.
I have another question. Oh,
Yeah.
Do we have questions? Yes, Sasha,
Did he know? Did he have seen Jackson Pollock paintings?
Because there was very important exhibition, as some of you remember, in 1959, American exhibition, and actually there was a painting by Jackson Pollock there. I am not sure, because I know that, for example, Nemuhin, dear friend of Zverev, went there, and Mr. Kohl went there, and Plavinsky went there, and unfortunately, I was not able to ask Zverev if he went, but I'm pretty sure he did, and I'm pretty sure that he'd seen the work. It's the very famous work, Cathedral. which is right now like in I think it's in Minneapolis. So probably yes. And there was because in that time he was very active because he won the first prize during 1957 exhibition. So he was, and him and Plavinsky, they actually went to every single exhibitions in Moscow. So I assume he did see it, and together with the works by Rodchenko, by Rodka. So yeah.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the paradox of Zverev's sort of trademark style is that from this what may seem like abstract impressionism grows something that reminds of Renoir or some post-impressionist painting. So this strange combination more or less defines what we recognize when we see Zverev's works, right? Where did this combination come from? Was it just something that he found organically? Were there any direct influences from somebody, from some, I don't know, teachers, mentors, leaders?
But to me, it seems like Zverev had like many mentors like during his life, and he was expelled from the school in 1905, so he didn't graduate from there. And but he had,
and the school wouldn't teach him anyway.
Probably yes.
These things in 1955.
So, but he did visit many museums together with Plavinsky, and he stayed with Kostakis and saw all the works by Russian avant-garde artists in his place as well. So then also Zverev did study in several art studios. And of course, like Old Masters was a big inspiration, works by Picasso was a big inspiration. So he had a lot of inspirations. And some of these inspirations you can trace in the early works especially. You can trace like those.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of those that you showed, we can see inspirations, but not in the sort of mature style. That looks very, very original and idiosyncratic. Okay, as I said, I don't want to occupy Natalia and Tatiana. Please, if you have questions, and I will be looking if we have. Yes, please.
I'm curious how so many of his works were preserved when he had no studio of his own, apparently no home of his own, and was just a vagabond.
Yes.
Where do we find the works that now exist?
He actually did have a home, but he didn't like to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
He never stayed in his home. Yes, he never stayed in his home. Instead, he was staying with Kostakis, with Aseyeva later in his life, and also he was painting 24/7 basically. So in someone's houses, and those artworks did stay with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Natalia Kostaki was also remembered that when she visited Zverev in Aseyeva place, he actually gave Natalia Kostaki to safekeep some of the works because he was really afraid that they will disappear, and she did. So, but there was a lot of works because he was kind of a popular figure back in the 60s and 70s. So a lot of diplomats keep his work, like a lot of collectors' work kept his work. But of course, a lot of works disappeared as well. But he painted, I mean, if you think about the number, 30,000, that's a really large number for such a kind of short period of time.
But he walked very quickly.
Yes.
It's my portrait, it's like few minutes. So,
Mm-hmm.
And I always think, I think maybe 1 hour, few minutes, it's all.
So it was some kind of improvisational art.
Yes.
But the improvisation was an important part of his trend.
Mhm.
So rapid improvisation.
But he have fantastic eye, he immediately see what's more important in your face. When you have like big nose or something, eyes, so you understand it. He immediately know what's need to be more important in your face.
You've seen many works of his. Can you distinguish works that he created when he was sober and when
Yes.
he was not?
Yes, of course. I mean, like any artistic career. I mean, when you have like such large number, such large body of work, of course. I mean, there is great works and there is works, which is kind of like just kind of passing by or like done in different mood. Because with the improvisation, that's what happens. Because I mean,
Not every improvisation is a success.
Every improvisation, it's, you know.
so you have to be very selective. Like with any artist, you have to be extremely selective.
Sasha.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how he's seen through the Russian institution of fine art and where are the majority of his works are stored, who has the largest collection. And also if you can tell us a little bit more, are there any other artists that he was collaborating with or having influenced by from other arts maybe? If you can tell us more about.
There is a AZ museum, which is dedicated like in Moscow,
We're so happy for that.
which has like very large collection of Anatoly Zverev art. And there is also like Kostaki collection, which is like also have a large holding. Tretskov Gallery have a large holding. Zimmer Art Museum have a large holding. So there is like there is several institutions which have like a large Art Forum, like Markin collection have like a large holding. Right now in Moscow there is so-called like Zverev Art Marathon, which is happening, which is simultaneously there are like 5 exhibitions, like large-scale exhibitions.
In Harriman Institute, in this marathon,
including like
in New York.
including 115 works in AZ Museum. I think there's like 60 works in Markin Museum. So I mean, there is a large holding of his works. And in terms of like different collaboration, he did collaborate, for example, late in his life with Kazarin, who's the artist.
I have few works, Zverev and Kazarin. I have in
So
our
when they
collection.
actually created the work, like late in life, probably like 85, like 86. So when he actually they were creating the works together.
Yeah,
And,
Zverev lived in apartment Kazarin, and this is some, you know, very interesting things when I walk in
House,
creative house in Bronne. You know, it's creative house. It's some very nice person walk there, like Barabanov, Patsukov, you know, and me, like 20 years. When it's, I never have been Komsomol members. For this, I don't have choice to walk somewhere. You understand? In Soviet Union, first of all, they ask you, you is a Komsomol party or Communist party? I am not, but it doesn't matter. And Zverev and Kazarin sometimes walk through Malaya Bronne, ask some money for drink, of course. And mostly, but they come to this creative house when I'm not there, and they borrow like 10 rubles. It's huge money for this time from my colleagues. And after 5 times, when I not received my salary, yeah, I tell my colleagues, please stop it. I cannot support much longer of these dreams, you know. It's something happening like that in our life, you know.
So they were
They
borrowing
borrow,
money
yeah.
from your colleagues and
So,
you had to
yeah,
return,
of
right?
course.
No, but also Zverev like
They never return.
But
And
they-
nobody returned.
No, never. But they forget after, you know.
at some point he was also collaborating with, like, but not in
Alenikov.
Alenikov as
Yeah.
well, but so but more like
Great poet. Kazarin, we have also Kazarin separate pieces, also very good artist, you know. It's not, you know, it's like friendship, spontaneous friendship.
But never with Plavinsky, never with Nimuhin.
no, but they were good. I mean, like they went Plavinsky, and Plavinsky created the monument on the cemetery for Zverev, and they were good friends, and they actually went to every.
That doesn't count as collaboration.
No, but they never collaborated on any single artwork. The same for Nimuhin,
Yeah.
they never collaborated, even though
Only
Zverev did
Kazarin
stay.
and
Yeah.
Alenikov. Yeah.
Zverev did stay in Nimuhin for like quite an extended period of time in his studio. Yes.
You know, last period of his life. where she does this, my second portraits in studio of Nemushina. But I bring canvas, oil, and everything I bring with myself. And for this, I have this very good portraits, oil and canvas.
Other comments or questions?
Who was his favorite painter from the old masters?
You know, it's this, for me, example, I never think about that. And why? I don't think so when, you know, he so spontaneous. For this, maybe when he don't know where he go to bed and where he wake. And, you know, he maybe this second he left one artist, and second, you know, before my portraits, we talk about a lot of like Botticelli, you know, Michelangelo. He know exact, very good, some pieces he know by heart, and it can describe me what's going on in these pieces. It's a surprise for me, believe me. And but of course, maybe next day he forget about this and thinks about another artist, you know. But when he receives the first prize and the Students' Festival in Moscow, it's very famous, 1957, when Soviet people first time see the foreign student, you can't believe. It's foreign, my God. They arrive a lot of persons arrive in Moscow, you know. But he received first prize, you know. It's absolutely independent prize, you know. So this is a, you know, I think it's mostly when he talented and his own vision, he don't need nobody. His vision is first. And when his vision dictate him what pictures he want to do this moment, this second, not like think, oh my God, like mostly artists, do some sketches, you know, or no, this not sketches, maybe I do this for, you know, in our collection, more of 300 artists, and believe me, I know how the artists work. I see sometimes like Kharitonov, left-handed, begin from one size, finish another size of pictures, you know. No sketches, but one size, another size, fantastic, you know. Well, this is a, and like Plavinsky, my godson, you know, it's, by the way, I do this first, his one-man show in Dubna. It's in a player, physicist, yeah. And, but this exhibition example of incredible, his etching, and etching, I got it. I not sleep tonight. I do this interview for you. And of course it's etching, no any materials like for Plavinsky. For this, of course, some nuclear physicists bring him for present, you know, from secret baths. But of course, I think it's maybe sometimes they complement one each other, you know, when they have the friendship. Zverev, Plavinsky, poet Alenikov, you know, it's a huge circle in Moscow, you know. When we don't have anything else, we have the great circle of art connoisseur and artists who independent from Soviet system. I don't know how it's possible, but believe me, it's like that. We try to separate from all this domination, red color. We try to separate us. And of course, it's mostly person live in communal apartments like me on beginning. and mostly not have any studio, not have any apartments. But so this is a Zverev mostly like как перекати поле.
Vagabond.
А?
A vagabond.
Да, да. It's like this, you know, she's travel not outside Moscow, but around Moscow, big city, you know, you can travel all his life and he do.
But don't you think that he's pretty much unique and sort of probably the last damned poet, the last romantic type, while all the artists with whom he befriended, they were members of the Union of Soviet artists, right? They were having studios from the state. Their works, not those that were doing for sort of non-conformist scene, but more conventional. They were commissioned, they were sold, they were having salary, they were having honorariums. So he is rather an aberration than a typical case. Would you agree with this or not?
No, because I mean, Zverev was not the only one, because there was a few characters. For example, in St. Petersburg, conformist scene, there is also like several characters.
Yeah, St. Petersburg scene is
like,
a little bit different, but Moscow scene, it was
But there was
pretty much well said.
I can't say that now.
Kabakov was the most popular illustrator of children's book, getting wonderful honorariums. Same was Bulatov.
Yeah, but it's a small circle of the kind of.
But it's not so small.
You see,
Conceptual.
received the
Pivovarov.
book, yeah, received the book for illustration. It's very complicated.
Yeah, but they did.
But example, Vasilyev, we also, you know.
Vasilyev and Bulat, they all did, but it's another small circle.
And when they received like, you know, 500 rubles for 1 year's work, these books, you can imagine that, you can divide all these 500 rubles only for 1 year. And see, they do the drawings for books, children book, mostly children books. But for adults, they not received mostly.
But because adults didn't have pictures in their books.
Sometimes, you know, and another 6 months, they work their own work, you know, style like that. And example, illustration in Znание Sila,
Knowledge.
yeah,
Power.
3 rubles. So all illustration, all page. It's for what you can do for this. And everybody have family, mostly have children. You need to buy canvases, papers, color, blah, 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 blah.
But how did they manage?
I don't know.
No, but I think the most important to remember about the conformist circles, that's not a united group. Yeah, I mean,
Not
all of
united.
them
No,
are
no, no,
so
They separate, yeah, yeah.
different.
Yeah.
They're not united by style
No.
or by
No,
training.
that's
So-
clear. But
so-
I'm talking about the
So I mean, but there was like several
economic conditions.
artists like similar probably like in personality like to Zverev as well, who also did similar lifestyle.
But you also mentioned that he was doing his shows for diplomats and probably
Yes.
not for free.
Yes, I mean, for example, like even Natalia, both Georgy Denisovich Kostaki and later Natalia Kostaki, they all helped him to get the commissions. And they were, and Kostaki, he was buying the canvases and the paint, and then he was inviting his friends to be painted, and then they were giving all the proceeds to Zverev. But it didn't last long because, I mean, like 2 days later, he was in the same shape and he left. So I mean, like because he was beaten severely, like many times. His right hand was broken severe, like a few times. So he on the streets, yes. So,
On the
like,
streets, you know,
yeah. So it doesn't matter what what the friends did
How
for
much he
him.
would get? He would
So
invest
like
in it.
2 days later, 3 days later, he was in the same shape.
for stranger people, he is a incredible creature who you don't want to talk. You understand?
Yeah,
For
it's
any
about-
stranger in the street, they afraid him, you know.
Like a homeless
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, like absolutely, maybe more one homeless, you know. And like my neighbors in my apartments, and also when we come to the men, they don't want to be close to him, you know. They afraid. you know, and possible understand these people when it's they not know who is this creature is, you know.
Thank you. We had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I remember from my conversations with my Moscow friends from like 30, 40 years ago, they always divided Zverev's work into like early period and late period. And they were saying that, okay, during the early years, maybe until late 60s, he was painting for himself, and later he started to paint more for other people, for earn some 10 rubles here and there, and
Sometimes 5.
sometimes 5, yes, and that do you agree with this?
But
or not?
at the beginning, like what I was saying, like when we're talking, like I mean, he knew what people want, and he knew what the expectations are, and so sometimes he was figuring out that what people are expecting is the performance, and he did deliver it.
So it was more.
So it was more like, I mean, for example, if it was like female portraits, I mean, and he knew what these people want. They want this particular style, this particular face, this particular eyes, and this large AZ. That's what he've done, and he've done like thousands of them, because that's what people really wanted. But if he came to Kostakis, if he came to my mother, if he came to some other people, he knew
When the place when he's not afraid, you understand?
he knew that he could.
He need to feel safe.
He knew that he can create something else, and he can experiment. And at the beginning, he actually can distinguish these things. At least it seems to me like he could. So that's I mean, he knew that people will not pay him like 3 rubles or 5 rubles. He kind of need to give back to them, and that's why he said, like, okay, you give me 5 rubles, I will kind of pay back to you in terms of my artwork. And he kind of knew what the people wanted.
He not как mercantильный, mercantile person, absolutely, you know, it's when he stay with in Nemuchin studio, you know, everything when, you know, Nemuchin have, he not need it. He not need furniture, he not, of course, he not some dresses winter, Russian winter, you know, some rain or something, very hot summer, but he don't need anything, and he don't like his apartment in Sviblov. He tell Sviblova, Giblova, and he be dead 1986 in Sviblova.
No, but like, also like from the same with Kostakis, I mean, when George Kostakis left to Greece, there was a lot of clothes which Natalia Kostaki gave to Anatoly Zverev, because but like 3 days later, he kind of disappeared. So he was coming back, kind of like everything torn out, and so they were giving him again, but like 3 days later, it was like the story was like happening again and again and again and again. So
the only consumption was associated with alcohol.
I don't think so. When he drink a lot, you know, when this example, when Kostakis bought like 3 bottles of beers and he drinks this few days.
But that's an exceptional situation.
I don't think so. It's exception. I think it's maybe he play more when he drink. It's my opinion.
So it's more like a performance too?
Yeah. When mostly the person maybe wait from, you know, him something like, you know, and they do it like after in Broadway theater, when, you know, they do improvisation. I not mean some performance who write down, but when some improvisation, any actor do the same, you know,
So it was his
like pianist, you know, they do improvisation when you expect from them. It's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think Sasha had a question. And colleagues, I invite you to not only to ask
Please
questions,
welcome.
but
It's a
you
unique
can comment
possibility
too.
when I talk.
This is also, I don't know whether you can answer to this question, but I'm curious because somebody in the talk mentioned how he had really difficult upbringing and that explosion influenced him. So was that the main reason of his lifestyle, or there were other maybe preaching?
The great part about Zverev, that he also was like a myth creator, and he was creating many myths.
About this.
And so no one knows. So for every single person, there was a different Zverev. So and a lot of people call him like Maria Plavinsky, they call him Zver, like beast. So in some cases it was Zver, like a beast character. So but like nowadays, I mean, he never. I mean, if you tell him the story, he will not tell you if it's the truth or not truth. He will just carry on. So
But
so we don't know.
Some perpetuate the same thing.
No. But
but
then he also told the story himself as well. So.
Observe.
But when I remember him, you know, he's very sensitive person, very observant, you know, and he like sometimes like psychologist, you know, when of course you can see when you need to be psychologist when you do portraits, you know, you need to be. When you not see the person what he like, you cannot do the portraits, you can do the studies, it's all. Like mostly university and in any country, you can do some like portraits and it's forget it. Nobody know who is this artist, but in Zverev, he know exactly what the person is.
But Natasha suggested that he had developed some kind of a cliche, right? So with some kind of a face that he was producing and reproducing over again.
It was not cliche, maybe is not the right word, but his kind of signature style.
Yeah.
I mean, artistic signature style. That's what we can say. It's not
Like individuality style.
I cannot say it's cliche. It's something like his style, which people were expecting him to do. I mean, like if it's.
Because there is a feature of playfulness, there is that lightness of the movement, of the kind of brush stroke, yeah. Yeah.
It's you know, I think it's I like this title, like Samorodok. You know,
Self-made
I
artist,
like
But it doesn't translate well into English.
It's
Self-made
not a good translation.
does not sound like a great term. Yeah.
It's mostly explain this Russian words, mostly explain what he is, you know.
But Samorodok suggests some kind of naivete, some
No.
naive
No,
work,
no,
but his
no,
work
no,
is
no.
anything but naive.
No.
It's like he was born that way.
Yeah, he born like this way. It's all. It's all.
On one hand, we are looking his work from the future.
And
they look different.
he feel very good in his body with his face. You know, it's all. But and he do anything when he have some piece of paper or some cardboard with my portraits or something. He can do any materials. You know, when you ask the artist, oh, can you do something? Oh, I need to go to have this oil. I need to this specially prices only this color, now only this number. You know, it doesn't mean nothing for Zverev. You know, nothing.
So, Kolodzei, what do you think about Zverev? You obviously know something about
Я
it.
не знаю, как это перевести по-английски.
Say it in Russian.
Но он гениально же говорил женщинам: садись, детка, я тебя увековечу.
He used to tell women, sit down, baby, and I will make you eternal.
Вообще, когда она ходила на эту выставку в Москве, Зверев Павловна, я вообще была потрясена просто.
Ну, вот это как раз.
It was astonishing at the
Да,
exhibition
да,
was. This one.
My favorite.
Yeah.
Sasha, Denis, would you like to say something?
No, I think that everybody is so excited about his works that I can't add anything, but I think that he's very strange and non-conformist artist. The whole bunch of these people different from him. He doesn't look like anybody who I know. And I think that your Mark was very right because it was between abstract expressed expressionism that was very important in theaters. And he was a bridge between old painting and new painting, but he was realizing he was a bridge. It was intuitive, I think. He found this road, this bridge, and it was very important and very nice to look at these pictures. I remember Picasso, Matisse, the same kind of drawings, very easy, very artistic, without any effort, effortless. But I've seen in Matisse, for example, he worked like 50, 60 sketches for his famous swan. But then it's for a few seconds that all this, you can recognize the people who he wrote, paint. And I asked about his favorite artist because I knew that all non-conformists, they're very new, they don't want to be to look
Related to anyone.
yeah, they don't want to be somebody from old painters. But I remember that I asked Bagish who was like Zverev in some way. And I said, what do you think about old masters? No, I don't care about old masters, I care about futurists. But okay, what is your favorite artist? And he was very shy. And he said, no, not a lot, but Raphael is an angel.
Surprisingly, here at the exhibit, where we see a self-portrait of Zverev, and again, correct me, I can be very, very wrong, where he, in my opinion, imitates a famous self-portrait of Rembrandt. With the beret, with the posture. So there are some strange Rembrandt references there. But again, that might be. And I agree with what Alexander Kenis has just said, that he is looking like an oddity because he probably is the least self-reflexive artist among non-conformist artists, which were extremely self-reflexive. Some of them created monographs about the art scene and themselves, etc. And it's completely sort of doesn't agree with what Zverev does, and that's why he looks as if he's some kind of the, I don't know, Rimbaud brought up from Paris of the 19th century into Moscow of the 60s, 70s, and sort of being like that. And that also is very similar to Vidik Terafeev, who also looks, although he is self-reflexive, of course, but least self-reflexive among other non-conformists, and that's why there is no room for them in these groupings and this sort of typologies that we are creating and trying to map the non-conformist world today. Right?
But Terafeev was very concerned about his art. He was very controlling art writer, not like this expressive genius. But Terafeev knew what he did, and he was very precise in his writing. And
that's why he wrote only one volume, as opposed to 30,000 words.
But you read his diary, and you can see he was crazy about this. How many mushrooms he gathered? 11.
Yeah.
What kind of temperature was this? 19. So he was a different kind of.
There is an urban legend that they met once.
Really?
Yeah, and
what happened?
Just trying to.
That's only the beginning of the great friendship. What happened?
Last time they saw each other. At least that's what I heard.
Any other comments or questions?
Maybe a few words.
Marina Adamovich, that's for the Zoom.
She do incredible and print articles.
Yes, but by the way,
Please.
Natasha wrote a very impressive, wonderful article about Anatoly Zverev, and it will be published in December issue of the New Review. And now about Zverev, of course, we all have our own interpretations. But I think that Zverev wasn't in art. He was an art. art by itself. And maybe he presented some sort of man of Renaissance when they live inside the art. It's pretty hard to explain this thing, but this is not performance. This is not their style. This is his nature. And he can drink, he can walk, he can draw, but he wasn't a human being, but he feels this world as an art, and he was inside this context. That's why we can't explain this phenomenon because it's just nature, and the nature of art. That's it. This is only my interpretation of this phenomenon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Read December
Issue of the
issue,
New Review.
yeah.
And while being a moderator, I forgot to introduce Natalia, but I think that better late than never, right? So let me introduce Natalia, sort of as the last words of today's event. Natalia Kolodzei, an honorary member of the Russian Academy of Arts, is a curator and art historian specializing on the art of Russia and Eastern Europe. She is also executive director of the Kolodzei Art Foundation, and along with Tatiana Kolodzei, owner of the Kolodzei collection of Russian and East European art. Since 1991, she curated over 80 shows in US, Europe, and Russia, including Oleg Vasilyev Memoirs Speaks, in the Tretьякov State Gallery, and in Moscow, and the State Museum in St. Petersburg, and a number of other shows, for example, dedicated to Russian feminist art, Russian women artists, also in St. Petersburg and Chelsea Art Museum in New York. She is an author and editor of multiple publications and organized and contributed to symposiums and panel discussions. And she's also co-hosting the Leonardo Laser CYLAND talks in St. Petersburg, now sort of in virtual reality, meaning everywhere for universities and exhibitions worldwide. In 2010, she was a member of Culture Subworking Group under the US-Russia Bilateral Presidential Commission. And you certainly can understand that she played the major role in the organization of this.
I'm so happy for that.
Right, so thank you, Natasha. Thank you so much. Thank you.
But we have also Anna Alexandra, 9 years old.
Yeah.
She have Anna Kolodzei Days of Art.
So the
Let's
dynasty
go in
continues.
and
which is wonderful.
enjoy it. Now let's go and enjoy the exhibition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far, it's
Any